Good evening. How is everybody doing this evening? I hope everybody is well. Let's give it a half a minute or so, and let's wait till we get to some people in the room. I hope I'm not coming in too loud. There'll be people rolling into the chat. As you all know, well, those that are going to show up, this is Mr. A. This is the set 6145. And tonight we have a very special guest, somebody that I have watched as a young man to a man in a path as a musician and as many other things regarding music. But this man is amazing, and his journey and his story is incredible, and I hope that we could all get that across and share that with everybody tonight. However, let's talk about some regular stuff that's going on. I'm sure everybody's looking over this confirmation hearing that we're having. I would like to tell everybody that right there is just political theater, and you shouldn't put too much weight on what is going on that front. Something very drastic is going to happen in this country, and we've been watching it. It's been like at a snail's pace. But with this move, just understand that there are going to be some heavy changes coming to this country. And I've been saying it for a while, and I hope everybody's paying attention and keeping their loved ones close. But do the best you can. Keep yourself safe. Keep yourself close to your loved ones, and especially love the ones that love you, and just be ready and vigilant at all times. I can't talk about the basketball whole LeBron Lakers issue anymore because it's just corny already. I know a lot of guys are battling it out on this whole GOAT talk, but my man Sally Sasson said it tonight. He's the greatest of this era. So we'll just leave it at that. So tonight I have a special guest with me. This man has somewhere in the area of 280 to 300 credits when it comes to music to his name. I was fortunate enough to be a small part of his history and his rise and his growth and his journey into music. I, at a very young age, we Puerto Ricans tend to gravitate to each other, and when we do, we sort of become family. So I was sort of interlinked to this gentleman, and happened to be on the ground watching this guy grind it out and surround himself with some like minds and some great musicians. For many years, I could tell you about all the parties that I went to where this man was DJing and making crowds go nuts. I mean, from Brooklyn, to Williamsburg and all the way around New York City. I mean, this gentleman he really laid it down. And I believe I could recall back to his hits going all the way back into the 90s. I mean, anybody who knows house music knows that this man's stamp is on a lot of records, especially if you're into house. You'll know when you hear a record, you can say, hey, I know there's Delgado on this music. From remixing to playing instruments, writing and arranging, editing, and I believe editing is where he got his start. But he's pretty much done it all, and he's really created a serious lane for himself. So tonight I want to welcome to the set the big bro, Mr. Mikey Delgado. Mikey.
Hello, everybody. What's up? What's up, Pops? I hope everybody knows that I'm not calling you Mr. A. I'm going to call you Pops. Because...
Well, you know what? You wouldn't be the first or the last, because a couple of people have already come on and done it as well. But it's all good.
I've been calling you that since you're a young kid and around my house and my cousins and my family. So I think I deserve that.
No. For sure. You've been calling me that since you were taller than me.
That's a long time ago, too.
That's a long time ago. So, Mike, tonight, just so you know, I want to give something different because your career speaks for itself, and as I said in the preamble, people who know house music, they know your name, they know the group that you traveled with, they know Masters at Work. Um, anybody familiar with you knows the body of work that you've laid out over the years, right? But tonight I want to do something different. Tonight I want to speak to the making and how you became the producer that you are today, but the journey and the steps and the grind, basically, what made you. Because, we all come from this area and these sort of backgrounds that it's sort of like taking a sword to a stone every day and you're sharpening it and sharpening it, and
Right.
over time that sword can cut through steel, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so people see you, and you've traveled the world. Um, I know one of the spots that I know you frequent is Ibiza. I believe
Yes.
one of your favorite spots, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most amazing places in the world.
Right. So, with that said, what I want to speak to is let's go back a little bit. Well, let's go back a lot. Um, you you started out as a DJ, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we're talking about mid late '80s.
Um, we're talking about I graduated high school 85. I was probably DJing 83, like
Eight.
2 years before. Like you're talking about 15, 16 years old, I was DJing. So I mean my trek was early on. I had belt drive turntables. I could
Wow.
only afford one at one point. So I it was a small mixer belt drive turntable, and then I had one of these black ugly turntables that came with the component that my parents owned, but that was my second turntable. So I mean, I started like that. It was like very raw, but I knew that I had a love for music. Let me go back a little bit. Anybody that knows my parents knows that. Well, my father. Everybody knows that my father was an instrumentalist. He loved percussion. He loved the music. The music is always blaring in the house. He's always playing some kind of a hand percussion, whether it be a guido or maracas. And this was almost an everyday affair. Come home from work, definitely on the weekends. And then mom was also the singer in the family. Loved to sing, loved to listen to the old West Side Story albums, old '50s stuff, and she knew all these songs word for word. And so I was influenced by all that, growing up. And I watched my mother sing all these songs, and she was a pretty damn good vocalist. So that was my blessing. I just came up with that, and then through the streets, you go out with friends and you start getting influenced by all this music that's going on. And early on, man, 15, 16 years old, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to play music. I wasn't sure that I wanted to make music yet, but I definitely wanted to play music DJ wise, so to speak. So that was the beginning of it all.
That was the introduction.
Yes.
Okay. So, considering that is many years ago, but
Right.
do you remember your? I would say your first gig, but that's probably a shot in the dark. If you would be able to remember something like that,
I could probably tell you
or an
my
early
first
gig.
one. I'm gonna tell you this. There was a. This is the way it started. I started doing these gigs for family. So
Uh huh.
we had a Sweet 16 within the family. We had a birthday party. That was my introduction to it all. And I probably was terrible back then, but I played the vinyl. I was playing everything was vinyl too. So
Right.
it was. You know what? It's crazy because I mean we'll go through it all, but all the people that are still with me throughout
Mm-hmm.
this trek is people that I met along the way, and I met them in peculiar ways where they were not supposed to be in certain places at certain times, but
Mm-hmm.
they happened to be there, and till this day they're still around me. But we'll get to that.
Okay.
Well, the beginning of it was local parties, and
Right.
first my family, and then I went on to do word of mouth spreads out. You start doing work for other people, just very small birthday parties and Sweet 16s, and some weddings came after, and then it just progressed. And as we could talk about the Tom McCann days, that was early 90s. And I'm sure the funniest part of that whole Tom McCann story is how we used to party in this place, and we were all used to wonder, because it was, I used to do that place. Pete from your block used to do
DJ
that
Pete.
place. DJ Pete
Yep.
and a couple other DJs, and we all used to say to ourselves, which one of our gigs is the floor going to fall down into the actual shoe store, and it'll be the end of it all, right?
That'll
'Cause
be over.
the floor used to
Rock.
literally was like a moving bubble, and
Yep.
throughout the whole night, it was crazy. But yeah, so that's how it started for me. It was more family. Then it spread out through word of mouth, and then we started doing our own gigs. I started doing my own gigs, renting small halls and charging at the door, and that's how it progressed from there.
So, speaking of Tom McCann in the neighborhood, um, I remember all those parties. This, even now at this late in my life, while other things and other facilities are starting to wear thin, those memories are really etched in my mind, right? Because I could remember being in Tom McCann and Kung Fu Jay getting into a fight, and
Oh yeah,
I can remember being in Tom McCann and watching Kenny, like you leaving the set to go drink or do whatever, and Kenny's back there throwing down. Like I remember these things very distinctly.
yeah,
And I remember, as our brother Anthony Lopez is in the chat right now, I can remember Witty's TMC jams, right?
yeah.
Anybody from Sunset in our age group will be able to pull up a memory and say, hey, I remember when so-and-so, was there, Pete threw this or Mike did that in Witty's.
Right.
So at this point, you're doing all this local stuff. You're starting to build a name. Things are happening for you.
Right.
Now, what triggers the moment that you decide, hey, you know what? I think I'm talented enough, or what is it that introduces you to actually making your own music?
So the way this all happened was, let me go back a little bit. So now we're doing these local parties, right? And now we started I'm gonna go into the beginning of the Masters at Work story.
Right.
So the Masters at Work story was where, since I was doing the local parties in Sunset Park, and I had a big following at one point with Tom McCann's Weedy Catering. Um, I was doing a few of those parties with Todd Terry.
Right.
Me and Todd go way back, many, many years. And then we also had another friend of ours called Franklin. So Franklin was an incredible editor on Reel to Reel. So he kind of put me up on that. And I ran with that. That was the beginning of me learning the production part of how at least that part of it was done. I didn't know anything about music as far as making it. No keyboards, nothing like that. All I knew how to do was play music, DJ wise, and then I started to edit. And
So,
then we went on to meet Kenny. And I met Kenny at the record store. I used to go buy records at Music Center in Sunset Park. That's where Kenny used to work and sell music. And we hit it off, and we brought him on the team. So while this team, we progressed into doing these parties, we were Masters at Work. That was on our flyers early on, as you might remember. And so that was the beginning of this happening. And in the process, I was watching Todd make all these freestyle records, and then Kenny was also starting to be influenced by Todd with the hip hop stuff he started to do, and then he also started to do the house stuff when that House Chicago brand blew up, and then that's when we were all influenced. But Kenny was ahead of me. Production wise, because he started early on by producing records. He DJed with me a lot, and he was a hell of a DJ as he is today. But his forte was, beating up those pads on that drum machine. He was the man. To this day, he's the man. And not because he's one of my best friends, but he's the man. So as well as Todd. So these guys, that's what I'm saying. I met these guys, and I don't feel it was a mistake. It was like we were supposed to meet and start this little thing early on, and then be influenced by each other, and it snowballed. Like that went on where I started to be influenced by Kenny doing records in his basement, and his father was flicking the lights on and off. That if we didn't lower this shit, it would he's gonna come down there and break everything. So yeah, that was the beginning. That was our lifestyle. Like my mother was doing the same thing. I was
Mm-hmm.
playing the music too loud in my house, and she'd come down and tell me to lower it, but that's what we did. And then it went on from there. Obviously Kenny went on to do big things, but that was my influence on production.
Right.
And then it went from there to Kenny and being introduced to Louis Vega, and then they took on the and let me just say, like, we were masters at work early,
Right.
but those guys are masters at work, and I don't want to steal any thunder from those guys just because we had this name early on. Because what they've done, I give them all the credit and the respect in the world. Like, they took house music production, remixing, soulful stuff. They took it to another level, and nobody could come close to what those guys have done. Not in their life, not in this whole lifetime that we've been experiencing the making of music. What they've done is unprecedented. So I just want to throw that in. I don't want to steal nobody's thunder. So going back to, I'm long winded here because I want to get everything in. So the way I was influenced, getting back to your question, of making music was I sat in these studio sessions
Mm-hmm.
with Kenny and Louis making records because I was editing all their records early on. I edited their first whole album, which was on Cutting Records, and well, the majority of the album. I didn't edit everything. They also had a couple of other guys. Chep Nunez, rest in peace. He edited some stuff on there as well. And so I was, I was. My blessing was that Kenny came on with me, and we created this name of DJs. Got this little brand going in the neighborhood, and then he got me going with his brand, and it all turned around. So that was my influence. I was editing for them, but I was sitting in a studio watching, you know, them make I Can't Get No Sleep with India. Like Mark Anthony early on, when Mark Anthony was coming to sessions and he doing background vocals, like all these things. I was in these sessions, but the highlight of that session was obviously watching Kenny work the drums, but um, watching Louis on the keyboard.
Mm.
So and Louis not a master keyboard player by no means, but Louis can play, and nobody gives him enough credit. Louis can play his ass off. Like, he could play his. He comes up with unbelievable ideas, and I just watched him, and I lost it. I was like, "This is what I want to do. This is what I want to learn how to play," and
Mm.
I stuck with it, man. It took me years. I self-taught. It took me years, but I learned. It was because I was determined to do it. But that was my first influence into making records. It was those guys. And then of course watching Todd. Like I've been to, like, Todd used to do crazy things. Todd would do a 4-track of a record, like he did that Dum Dum Cry on 4-track, and
Mm-hmm.
he had every little piece of tape. He would record on every little speck of the tape. He would punch in and out, and nobody would understand how he would do it. These engineers would be like, "Todd, I can't get this right. Like, it's the levels all over the place." He's like, "Don't worry about it. I'll do it." We go to Tony just mentioned, we go to Power Play Studios in Queens, and he'd make me edit everything for him because the levels were all over the place, and then he would come up with different passes of it, and that's how we put those records together. So those guys were there from the very beginning, but those guys influenced me to become the producer that I am today. So I'm eternally grateful for that, man. Those guys
People,
blessed me.
people, if you're just joining us, this is Mr. A, host of the set. We're here with a legend from Sunset Park, Mike Delgado. He just gave the rundown on how he was influenced and what gave him the spark to take this creative nature that he felt inside of himself and to make it his own and make his own creations and bring things to life for him musically. You heard a lot of very well-known names, and as I said earlier in the preamble, this gentleman walked with some of the legends and worked with them. So this is just somebody that, we all know who Mike is, right? His work is proven. But he said something that really caught my attention and which I want to explore on, because I think this is something that gets missed when it comes to history. So Mike mentioned the Music Center, and anybody who is a Sunset Park resident or who ever just hung out and had friends in Sunset Park, this Music Center was the place. So when anything ever dropped, listen, everybody was there. And when you went to the store, there were two people that, and I'm sure you're going to know this, Mike. There were two people that were constants in the Music Center. One was Kenny, before he got too busy.
Yep.
Right? And you would see him there spinning, and he would tell you about this or that if you asked, right? And the other was Daisy.
Yes.
Daisy was the other constant in the shop.
Yep.
Right? So, with that being said, and everybody starting to feeling a little nostalgic about, the hood and where we grew up, right? Let's talk about what was going on in the neighborhood. Because I think that's something important that people need to remember, or let's have a discussion about. Because, Mike, we're a few years apart. I don't want to make you feel old, because you're not. We're a few years apart.
Yes, I am.
You watched me grow up. I watched all you guys, from my early teens until, I became a young man. What was Sunset like in that time and moment? And being that you had this sort of motivation to get into music and whatnot, how did it keep you? Because, I understand everybody that you were surrounded by, right? So how did you keep yourself from going the different directions besides the music? Like, what else kept you grounded? Because there was a lot going on in the neighborhood.
No doubt about it.
Right?
No doubt about it. Well, you know what? Let's not get it twisted. Like, I wasn't a saint. I wasn't.
No.
I wasn't a saint. And I got my share of history. I got myself in trouble a couple of times, and fortunately things panned out. Where I didn't get into that much trouble, but I had my share of hiccups, so to speak. But it was rough. It ain't like it was not like it is now. So back then, you had an issue with somebody because as it was a tough neighborhood. But in retrospect, I wouldn't change it for nothing in the world, because it was the best time of my life. I had so much fun growing up in that era. But it was a rough neighborhood, and some people prey on weakness, and if you were weak, you weren't going to survive in Sunset Park. So I'm glad, because I carry that with me today, with my decision making, with the way I am, with the way I handle things. It was my upbringing there. Yeah, you had to scrap with people. You had to fight a lot. You had to get busy. That's the way it was, and it was like that from early on. I wouldn't change that for anything in the world. But by no means was that an easy neighborhood. So what kept me going was, as a lot of people know me, I play sports as well. I was a baseball guy for many years. Went on to play softball, and that kept me grounded, because I loved the game so much that I played enough to keep me out of trouble. Somewhat. Not, I was still in trouble, but I never went the route of, I didn't want to make money in the streets, because the only thing I was always concerned about with that making money in the streets was, if my mother ever found out about it, how much it would wreck her, how much it would hurt her. So that was something that I always held close. Like, my mother would be devastated if she found out that I was, wilding in the streets, making money in the street. So, it would embarrass her, it would embarrass the family, And listen, I'm not knocking nobody's game, because, as you know, the people that I know, they have that. There's a lot of my friends that have that street game till this day, and you know what? I'm gonna go off on a limb, and I'm not gonna comment on it, but I'm gonna say this as real as I can say it. If you could beat the system by all means, without hurting anybody, but beat the system, because I'm a big proponent of that. But I'll leave that shit alone. But yeah, I just didn't. My fam keeping my family like not embarrassed and not embarrassing myself. Um, I just try to take that path, and then I found music, and then music was like I just kept myself busy with a lot of things. I partied, and I party a lot with the same guys that were in the streets making money. We went out, we partied, we fought a lot. We fought a little bit too much at some points. But then I guess I got a little, things got a little bit easier for me when I started to separate myself from I can't say I separated myself from any of my friends because they're still my friends to this day. But I had my son. I had a son early on, 21 years old. I was a
Wow.
young man, and I even shied away from music a little bit because I had to go and I had to go to work. I didn't. I didn't. That's another story. Like so, what I did was my son was I was 21 and I couldn't. I kept thinking to myself, "Damn, I don't want to be 50 years old and being a DJ." So I said, "Let me go start a career." So I went to work in Wall Street for a little while, and then I did that for a bunch of years, and then I became an electrician, which I still am today. But the shit is that I always said to myself, "Yo, I don't want to be 50 and DJing." And guess what? I'm 53 and I'm still doing this damn thing. So, and it was probably, I'm no regrets, but everybody that held on to the DJing and that game, everybody that came up with, they're still doing their thing and they're well off. They did their thing. So at some points, I think about that. Nah, maybe I should have just hit this a little bit harder. But who's to say that something wouldn't have happened on a flight somewhere or something wouldn't have happened? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I take it as that. But yeah, I kept it grounded in the neighborhood when I had my son, and more when I just didn't want to get involved with the craziness and hurt my mom. That was the biggest thing for me. So yeah, that was it.
I think that thinking about it now, uh, I look at your family and I see the unit and sort of the union that you guys held, right?
Right.
Um, your father, as a young man, as a kid, and then becoming a young man, your dad always had a specific sort of spirit,
Yeah.
right? And at times, I think for me, on the outside looking in, I believe like his spirit, we'll call it that, had a lot of impact, right? Sports, bringing you forward as your principles and the person and the man that you become as you get older, right?
Right.
Um, but I think that in that journey you had a lot of balance, which sort of kept you as you were just saying. And it's funny to me because knowing the environment and the people and everybody in the group,
Right.
how everybody's direction and what everybody was doing at the time, to think now 20 years later and seeing where they are, right? Guys are working for the city, guys are, their own businesses, whatever the case may be. And
Yeah.
I laugh about it because when you hear people talk, you know, they give this whole squeaky clean image, and I'm like, bro, you you don't know that guy.
Yeah.
I know that guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I guess my point, what I'm trying to get at is, um, this upbringing and this background and environment and all these things that made you who you are and sort of molded you, right? Are there anything? Are there any items or any things that you missed out on along the way, or opportunities that you may have missed out on because of the elements that you were dealing with back then that you sort of like maybe, damn, I regret not doing that, or if I just would have moved a little bit quick, I would have had this opportunity, or anything like that.
Uh, I don't think I missed out. I think the only thing I could probably think of, but with no regrets, is because it was a decision I made for my son. So I made that decision early on to back up from the music business. Because when at a young age I was traveling. I was all over Europe. At a young age. I was traveling. I There's not many places that I haven't seen in Europe, and so I was blessed with that. And then I had to calm down because I had a newborn at home, and I was like, you know what? But I always kept doing music, so that's what always kept me attached, and I was always somewhat relevant in the game because I always had a studio at home. I kept producing. So when I wanted to come back and I wanted to do something, everybody welcomed me with open arms. It wasn't like I got away from it, I stopped it, didn't do any records for years, and came back 10, 15 years later and then wanted to be a producer again. That's not what happened. I
Right.
just stopped the fast paced part of it. Getting on a plane. Like I was at one point, I almost moved to Naples, Italy. I had a residency over there, and I was over there for every other weekend for like, I swear, for like maybe 7 months, 8 months, every
Wow.
other weekend. And it was one of the most amazing places in the world. And had it not been for my son, I probably would have made that move. So things like that, those opportunities did present themselves, but
Right.
you know I don't have no regrets other than I probably could have done work out both things a little bit better and maybe taken this music thing to another level if I just focused on it. I kind of like turned it off, the DJing and the traveling, you know. And again, I had a partner too. I had my ex, which is my son's mom. So trying to convince a young girl, she was younger than I was. I was 21, she was 20. So trying to convince somebody that young, even if it was a couple of years later, I started to go out again, and then I stopped. But trying to convince somebody that young that oh, by the way, I'm going to Naples, Italy, and then I'm going to Switzerland the next day. I'm not going to be back to the middle of the week. Um, you that just doesn't work. So
Right.
there was a lot involved, but I have no regrets. I'm still doing what I love to do, um, and people still accept my music and remember it, and I'm eternally grateful and humbled by that. Like the fact that I did records 30 something years ago and people still remember the records is mind boggling to me, bro. It's just bugged out to me. Like, and yeah, because and then especially stuff you just sat down to do without any, like, nobody sits down and says, "Oh, this is gonna be a big record." Like you just do
Right.
things out of feeling,
Right.
and fortunately, I got a lot of people that still follow me, still give me mad love and forget about it. Like I'm eternally grateful for that, bro. But
People, sorry to cut you off, Mike.
yeah, man.
People, if you're listening and you're tuning into the show just now, this is Mr. A from the set. We have a legend from Sunset Park, Mr. Mikey Delgado, and we're just discussing his trials, tribulations, life's journeys, and all the things in between. Um, Something you said about people still recognizing your work from 30 years ago, right? So prior to us sitting down right now, I started to do a little exploring myself online, right? Because like I said earlier, the facilities, some of them are not as sharp as they used to be, right? So I sort of wanted to refresh my memory. But the one constant thing that I kept running into, and I'm talking about YouTube, I'm talking about message boards, I'm talking about record. You remember record pools?
Of course,
Remember record
of
pools,
course,
right? Okay.
absolutely.
I had the opportunity to go to record pools, but now it's sort of like digital to a degree.
Yes,
So in all my research and trying to like go back and pick up on things and just sharpen my memory of the business side of who you are,
right,
the constant that I kept coming across in comments from people, and I'm talking about people from England, um, from Spain, from all these abstract places around the world that you would not think of, right? The constant and the most repetitive thing was, wow, this man still has it. His work still, your catalog still carries and transcends from when you made it to now. Like
right,
they listen to it and they're like, and I'm sure you probably listen to it and go, damn, I could have tweaked that muted trumpet. I could have
right,
put more Rhodes, or you know what I'm
right,
saying. But
right,
that was the constant. So being that you have laid this work, this body of work, this catalog down, what what do you feel at this point in your life and career, as far as music is concerned? Is there something that you would like to accomplish before you ever consider hanging your gloves up, as they say?
Um, if I got to tell you about the constant thought process with still doing this, I think the things that I want to do still is probably finish an album or two. You know, I'm working on an album now, with various artists that I want to work with. I've been fine tuning this room, just so I could get it to that point where I can have people come in and record. It's done now. It's ready to go. So, but if I had to do anything, it would probably be, just put out some stuff more consistently, and then maybe do an album or two, and then see where I end up. I don't know if I'll ever stop. I guess I'll let you know when that happens. But I just love doing this. This is a good rec time for me. I could come in here, release, get away from everything. And by no means that's not why I do this. I want to put music out. I want people to
Right.
still hear what I'm doing. I still want to, be relevant out there, and I still want people to hear what Mike Delgado is doing. But to touch on the things that you're talking about, the things that I haven't done like I last album I made was probably, and I'm talking about full album, was, and you know what, I should mention his name because he was part of my come up with me. Like,
Please do.
so we were a group called Deep Zone, and
Okay.
in that group had a partner, Matthias Helbron, homeboy from Germany that moved over here. As soon as he worked over here, he's an unbelievable DJ, unbelievable producer. I met him as an engineer, and he was engineering Frankie Knuckle records when he first got here. So
Wow.
he's very well in tune. And if you look at anybody chasing his catalog is dope too. He's done amazing, amazing records. But we hooked up and we did a lot of work together, and work that is still relevant today that people still talk about. So I have to throw him in there. As well as another guy that I was doing records with in my basement in Sunset, my boy Scott Wozniak. And I remember doing records in my basement, and if anybody knows how a record is done, we had mixers. Yeah, we had two little Mackie mixers with 16 faders in each, and we had the whole track laid out. But it was no automation. I know I'm getting too
No, no,
involved
no.
in the technical aspect of it, but to do a mute in a record, we go straight to digital DAT, right? To DAT, and we were doing punches live. So we were like two octopuses reaching over each other and doing punches together. And yeah, so we studied how we were going to do this record, and then when we fucked it up, we like got to start again. We go back to the beginning, but that's how we did these records, man. So all those guys were there on my come up, man. Like those guys were with me from day one. We struggled in the beginning, and we made something of ourselves. And I'll be a fool not to mention those guys. Those that's part of me, man.
So Mikey, speaking a little technical, for the audience. So the Mackie, he's probably talking about a Mackie 1602 VLC Pro,
You
maybe.
go,
So he had
you
two of
go.
those, so that's 32. And then the ADAT, it's like a little digital cassette. It's
Correct.
considered digital, but it's a physical cassette.
Right.
For all us, older folks, we remember when we had cassettes, right? We used to punch in and out
Oh yeah,
Red Alert and whoever else we were trying to
that was the
record.
beginning of my editing days. Like that's how
On
I
tape.
edit. Yep, on tape, on cassette tape. Correct. Yep.
So the DAT tape was like a more advanced form of recording.
Right.
That was before, no, that it was real then DAT, correct?
Yeah. It was real. It was real to real. That's what we
Yes.
used to mix down to, and then from the when it was only the analog stuff, the reel, that would go straight to mastering, and they play. They master right off the reel to reel, make the plate. Now, well, not now, but after that was that the digital, small little digital tape.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because when that happened, we were walking around. And I mean, I got other names I could throw in there too. I mean, I gotta throw Benji Candelario, Danny Buddha Morales, like all those guys on my come up, they influence, my career. Quick story, I had a DAT tape, and back then, all these producers, we used to go to Base Hit. Base Hit was the center point of Masters at Work. All the magic happened at Base Hit Studios in Manhattan. So we'd all be there. I was there a lot because I edited. I was working out of that studio. But then these guys would come up when Louis had a session, or when Kenny and Louis had a session, or when Roger would have a session, Roger S. Like all these big names worked out of that studio. So whenever anybody had a session, everybody would go and hang out, and everybody would walk around with a digital tape of their latest shit. And throw he's anybody like Kenny would say, yo, anybody got something? I'm tired of listening to this record. Anybody got something? Let's play something different. So I'm like, yo, play this. I just worked on this the other day. Or Benji would come out, or somebody, and that we used to sample our stuff in the studio. And then that was the networking that went on, and then that's how stuff got sold to labels. Like Benji was responsible for one of my biggest records because I gave him a DAT, and I just gave it to him. Like, Benji, I did this like 6 months ago. I ain't doing nothing with it. Play it out, see if it works. And Benji was in Europe every other weekend the way I was. And when he comes back, he's like, yo, you don't understand what you got here, man. And he's like, can I make the deal? So I ended up making the deal to release For Pleasure in London, and it was my one of my biggest records, which is called the Murder EP. And
Yes.
those three joints that were on that was the Murder EP. And yeah, so it just that would have never happened if I didn't see Benji that day and I didn't give him that probably would have still been in my closet where the other dats are. So it's just that's the way. That's why I said we all met each other for a reason. The universe put us together for a reason, and I'm grateful for all those people that were with me along the way.
Listen, people. So you heard Mr. Delgado just mention the Murder EP, right? Correct, right?
Yes, the
So
murder.
let me see if I can share this with you guys, because of course I was speaking to Mike earlier. I told him that I was doing a little research and whatnot, and it just so happens that he mentions his record, and look what I have
Yeah,
right here.
that's it, man. That's it.
You know, this was, man, big, 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 big.
Yeah, that was actually my first real production based out of Europe. Like I released a lot of stuff locally. Soulful House, the underground house scene was amazing over here. So there was a label on every other corner. Like, it's crazy because I did a lot of records for Todd's label, Freeze Records, and I would literally go when I was running low on funds. I go and we do music. Go to Todd's to Freeze Records, walk in and talk to Will Sokolov, which was Todd's business guy,
Hmm.
and then he cut me a check for in the early '90s for $2,000, and that was my like money that I needed back then in the '90s, $2,000. And if you did
Wow.
that 2 or 3 times over, you were doing good for yourself. So that was the game. It ain't like that now, but that was the game back then. And so, but when I did that in Benji signed that in London, is when things took off because I started traveling after that. So yeah, that was a blessing to me, man. Like I said, man, I'm eternally grateful for all the people that the universe put in place.
It's funny how those things happen, and I hear you speak of them now in such a fond manner, right? Because these are people, as you said, that had such an impact, not only influence, but an impact on where you ultimately were led to,
Right.
right? Had the universe been out of whack, and you had not maybe met a few of these guys, maybe things would be a little bit different. Um,
Absolutely.
and hearing you tell the story, it's almost like fate, right?
I
It's those moments where, in key moments in your life, where these people just happen to be, or things just sort of happen in a weird kismic way, that you're like, you know what, this is my path. This is meant to be. This guy
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to be here. Like,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So in that same note, do you feel like there are anybody that you've met in the industry and things that you have done along the way that you have also helped and or influenced in their career path?
Uh, if I had a, I mean, if I had to say influencing anybody directly, it would probably be um, a lot of people that I just don't know.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I constantly get messages, private messages,
Mm-hmm.
about how I influence people. How, and I'm not talking about. I'm talking about musically, but I'm also talking about, which is crazy because I didn't do these vocal, deep, thought out records. I mean, I did that after, like, but in the
Right.
beginning, it was just tracks. But people would, and they still write me to this day how that record, which was a track record, got them through this dark time, or got them through a dark place that they were at, and they were just not feeling good. And then they would listen to that and it would just, change the whole mood. And I can't tell you, I so many times that I've gotten like these unbelievable messages. That's why I'm like humbled and grateful beyond words, because that part of it. So, um, if I helped anybody along the way, it would probably be the person that I don't know, man. And then there's other people that write me and like, I love your style, from the way you made records. I love the way you you program drums. I try to mimic what you do. I've been playing your records. Like, people hit me up like that all the time, and so yeah, I probably don't know the person that I influence most. You know,
Is there anybody that you've ever broken on a record that we may not know of?
broken meaning new person and just
Yeah,
did it.
somebody that we never knew, and they went on to do other things.
Um,
I mean, I can tell you this. I remember hearing for the first time that Starvin was actually involved in music,
big time.
and the funny thing is just just being around each other or whatever. That's not something we talked about. It was his character, right?
Yeah, right.
Starvin was
Was
you
a
know
character.
was the
Yep.
character.
Yeah, he was the funny guy in the group.
Right.
Yep.
So fast forward, I'm living out. I'm on Staten Island, and he just so happened to move out here at one point, and we bumped into each other.
Right.
And like clockwork, like I just saw him yesterday. It turns on. We're talking, and we're catching up, and we start talking about music and whatnot. And he's like, "Yeah, when I did," blah, blah, blah," and I was like, "What?" I
Oh yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh
And he's
yeah.
like, "What do you mean you?" I was doing, dude. I wasn't in that circle. I was around y'all, but I never knew that.
Well, with him, he played on a lot of my records, especially when I had the Deep Zone. Um, like when I had the Deep Zone with my boy Matthias, uh, we had done a bunch of records, and we did an album also. We did an album for Japan, and he played on the whole album. But
Uh huh.
he had already played on the New Eurekan Soul that Masters at Work done, and had done, and he played on a lot of their remixes. So, um, and then Starvin did records out of my house too. Like, he was a good producer, so
Really?
he used to come to my house, and it was like an open house for him. Like, I wouldn't even be home at times, and he'd be down in my basement using my studio. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that was the relationship that him and I had. We don't see each other. Like,
Representate,
yeah,
Tito.
yeah, yeah. But he's a badass producer. He was very, very talented. Very talented. And
Wow.
but he was an amazing percussion player. Like, he
Really?
could play anything. So yeah, Kenny and Louie used them for a lot of records. So I definitely didn't get him going in that. He was already doing that with Louie and Kenny. Like, he was already established. But if I
Okay.
if I had to say, we learned together, probably you could say him and I learned together. How to
Okay.
start the production game and all that. But
Okay.
extremely talented. Another guy that I can't forget about is, he's also my partner today. We have Brooklyn Built Music. Is Dirty Harry. Now, Dirty Harry, when he was young,
Hip
he
hop.
did, yeah, amazing. Like,
Yeah, no, you. The name itself. Period.
um,
Dirty Harry.
amazing. Like,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of guys with I probably put him up back then in that technique competition.
Hmm.
Back then, he was that nice. Like he could have won those competitions hands down. But then he went on to be an amazing house producer too. He's got a lot of records under his belt that are
Really?
still played. And yeah, look him up. Dirty Harry still played. I did a couple of them with him. We did a couple of records together. But Harry, he's still doing records till this day. Till this day, extremely, extremely talented brother. That boy could program drums. I mean, probably as good as Kenny because he's that deep when it comes to drum programming. Just
See,
ill.
you see what you know. I don't know how many people in here like listen to me. I know everybody here listens to music. I know everybody loves like, I love house. I love salsa. I love this. But the way I listen to music and how I dissect the talent, if you would, when you said Dirty Harry is just as good as Kenny, if not whatever, the way that Dirty Harry, the way I know him, and the way I know Kenny from his early hip hop days, that layering and chopping and being able to marry 5, 6, 7, 8 different layers into one,
Yeah.
that is in. People don't understand how incredible that is. When you
Yo,
hear the finished product, you're like, oh shit,
yeah.
that is difficult as fuck.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And then you study that, right? Or you watch it. You watch it happen. Like
Right.
many instances that I've been in bass hit and I'm watching Kenny program drums and he got this loop and he flipped the loop a whole different way and he's playing just the loop by itself the way he flipped it and I'm like that shit don't make no fucking sense, man. What the fuck is that? So and he played and then he's like, all right, put the drums in. And then when he puts the drums in, you're like, oh my God, like this shit is amazing. He did that shit all the time. Like it wasn't just a lucky instance. He did that all the damn time. Well, Harry is on that level. Like Harry could break little things down. Like Harry don't use any drum loops. Harry
Okay.
chops things. He don't use a drum loop and throw it on top of his beat.
Uh-uh.
Not that type of programmer. He chops things and he uses little things. He's a perfectionist.
Yeah.
He's a perfectionist. He takes little things that he needs and he flips it a certain way. So that him and Kenny, they came up together on that drum programming bit because him and Kenny were really really tight when they were really learning that drum programming at the very beginning. This is before Masters at Work, so they were both, I guess, taking in the same influences and learning from each other. I was still more the DJ at that time.
Right. Right.
Those two guys, man, I don't, I don't think I'll put both of them up against anybody. And Roger S is probably another incredible drum programmer, but I tell you, Kenny and a close second is Harry for sure because those
So
guys.
so I don't want to lose anybody on this, but this is something that interests me. So I'm going to ask him while I have him because I don't get to have these discussions with this gentleman in this vein, if you would. So when you speak about programming drums, you're talking about these guys are working on. It was before the MPC 60, so they must have been working on the SP 1200, no?
SB 1200. So so we're talking about a
Wow,
machine that had 12 seconds of sampling time,
that much.
right? Yeah. So they would get kick, snare, hi hat, percussion, or maybe a vocal snippet, bass line. They would make it work, and they unbelievable how they would come up with this groove from such a little. You know what they did was they record the loop at halftime and then speed it up, so that would give them 24 seconds, so to speak. But even that, I mean, yeah, that's not time considering what you have now.
Hmm.
And that's what all those early records that they did in the 90s, especially the tracky stuff, a lot of the new groove stuff that Kenny did, um, even some of the stuff that I did stuff with Harry on Strictly Rhythm Records early on. All that stuff was SP 1200, and they were the masters at that shit. Todd's another one. Todd made all those incredible records, the Jungle Brothers joints, Can You Feel It, all that stuff was all
SP
SP 1200, 12 seconds. So
mad
rec-
scientists.
oh my god, like beyond scientists. You guys were incredible at that shit. Yep.
See that's something that when you see somebody work in the studio, especially when you understand or you have a good idea of the parameters of the equipment that they're working within,
Right.
and they take it and they make something so like sounding tremendous, like they fill it up with this much space, and that's how you know that those are super talented people.
Yeah. Yep.
That takes a lot.
Those are people that are you know their blessing their blessings are like they go unnoticed sometimes, because people
Yeah,
take it for granted that, oh man, this, but what they do, like, I look at it from another perspective. Like, I'm more of like a musician now, as opposed to, I was a DJ back then, so I just love the groove. Now I study it. I study, damn, the drum programming on this is fucking bananas, or the chord progression in this is just like ridiculous, or the bass line, the way, like, I study things now. And till this day, I don't think anybody could do it the way Kenny does it on the drum programming. And like I said, Harry, a close second, because the both of them are badass.
and it's crazy because in the '90s, in the early '90s, when I was picking up Dirty Harry tapes, or first hearing them to begin with,
Right, right,
um, was from friends in the Bronx,
right.
right? So I
Is that
remember.
crazy? Picking it up from the Bronx, and Harry was like around the corner, lived on 3 blocks away from you, 4 blocks away.
You lying?
Harry was 57th and 6th Avenue. Yep. You know Brandon, basketball Brandon, tall.
My bad.
That's his brother.
So he's still doing music.
We have a label together, Brooklyn Built Music. Him and I, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, we have a label together.
Wow.
I was talking to him a couple of hours ago about what our next releases are gonna be, and what we're gonna do coming up, and yeah. So
Wait a minute. All right. So this is perfect because this segues. I just threw a question into the room, and I wanted
okay,
to ask you if you were involved in it, or were you around for when it happened?
go
Because
ahead.
there was a huge buzz during the time that Mike and Masters at Work and Kenny and everybody were in the neighborhood doing a lot of things, right? So at that time, there was a rapper from Bushwick who was in Harry's circle by the name of Gus Fiol. Um, he was known as MC Blink.
Yes.
This record was done, and it actually, I want to say it was on Red Alert. I really want to say that because I could remember it being on the show. Were you around for that? Like, were you
I,
in, like,
I
in the
was, I was,
vicinity?
I was, yeah. So I didn't do much of that hip hop stuff. I mean, that
Yeah, I
wasn't my
know. I
forte,
know.
right? So I would, but that's how Harry started. But yeah, I was around for all that because, remember, people have to understand that when we did parties back then, we played hip hop, we played freestyle, played house, played slow jams. So although I wasn't participating production wise in any of that stuff, I probably wasn't even producing yet. I was around that because Harry was doing some parties with me. And I think Gus might have even performed at one of the weedy nights that I did. But man, that guy should have been as big as they all are, because that guy, his writing skills was, he was ridiculous. But I was around for all that. Yeah, I was around for. I used to be in Harry's house all the time especially when he started doing the house stuff. But he never shied away from the hip hop stuff. So I would always listen to both things that he did, and yeah, I listened to all that Gus stuff when early on, which was
It's
incredible.
it's crazy
Yeah,
because just I listened to that record about maybe about 2 weeks ago because YouTube is everything. You can find
yeah,
anything there, right?
hell yeah,
So I listened to that record, and I listened to the production, of course, but more importantly because I love hip hop. I've always loved hip hop. I listen to the lyrics, and I'm laughing to myself because I tell people all the time, today's hip hop is fucking trash because
garbage.
they're not lyricists.
No,
There are very few artists that are lyricists nowadays. But my point being is that when you said that guy Gus should have been, man,
Yeah.
That brother's pen game was
Unbelievable.
serious. It was serious.
Unbelievable writing skills. Like,
And
and his flow was crazy. Like he was badass boy. That boy could like he could spit, man. He was dope. He makes somebody like me that wasn't entirely into it. I was probably into it more back then than I
right.
am into it now, for obvious reasons. But he could get a guy like me that wasn't completely into it, like mesmerized, because you could understand what he's talking about. Like there was no like, rah, 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 rah. He was like just telling a story, and you're like, okay, I'm listening, bro. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the kind of game he had, and then Harry on top of that, with his skills, like they could have done bigger things. And obviously, whatever happened happened, but they could have been big. Those two.
Clarity, his cadence,
Yes.
and the content.
Yep. Yep.
And listening to that record, listening to that record brought me right back to the Avenue.
Yeah.
And it was like the winter time when that record dropped.
Yep.
And the man, the hood was buzzing. Everybody in Sunset was like, "Yo, you heard it? It was crazy."
Yep.
That was a special time.
Nah. Yeah. That was. I don't have any regrets, man. That come up in that neighborhood was really. I got to meet amazing people. Still, most of them are still my friends. Just the experiences, and the fun that I had, and it's just a good time to live. Like
Yeah.
I won't change that for anything in the world, man. That was a blessing to me.
So, all right. What what are you presently? I know you said you were working on an album, I believe.
Yes. Yep.
So are you going to be done with that? By the end of the fall, by the end of the winter, or is it going to be released next summer? Or
Well, my goal is to get in here on a more consistent basis and try to get it done by December. Um,
okay,
Fortunately, with the way the game is now, well, unfortunately, you can't have artists coming over and you can't go to studios because of the way it is now. But fortunately, we could send things to people because everybody has a means of recording
right,
at home now. So, um, so I mailed out a couple of things already to, sent out a couple of things to a bunch of people, and I'm waiting to get for them to get back to me with lyrics and see what melodies, and then we could do stuff like this where we can actually collaborate via live footage, and then we could just talk about what direction we want to go. So I just wanted to get this room going to where it was where it needed to be. That I didn't need to do anything else to it,
right,
and I'm here now. So yeah, by December I should I have a lot of the tracks completed.
right.
It's just a matter of whatever's getting vocals. I got to work on the vocal part. It's not all going to be songs. It's going to be some instrumentals on it too. Tracky stuff. But there's going to be a bunch of songs in there as well. And then just continue with the label. Harry's got two two things he picked up lately. One that he worked on, one that he picked up from the outside. That's supposed to be released on our label, and then I'm probably going to give him a like an EP again before the end of the year, and just work on the album. Yeah, that's one. And I also have a little business venture with
Okay,
Kenny as well.
okay.
Um, so I won't elaborate on that, but when I can elaborate, I'll hit you up, and then we can talk
Please.
about that together because that's gonna be good. That's gonna be really nice. So when I can, I'll definitely hit you up. We'll do this again.
Listen, people. If you're just joining, you joined too damn late because you done missed the entire history, the walk that this man has taken through the industry, his personal life, his adventures, going overseas, and all things in between. Um, I can't say enough how much I appreciate you carving out your time because even though we're in a pandemic and whatever it is, and we're all inside, a lot of people don't want to give up their time, and I get it, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you giving me this time, and like I respect your work, one, and we like family, bro.
You already know.
And that's what I appreciate. You've never changed. From the time that I was a kid to now, you've always been the same, and I really appreciate that about you.
Well, I appreciate you, man, and just so I could give everybody a synopsis of you, man. You came up as a young man in our neighborhood, and we always held each other's back. I got into situations where you were there for me, and you've come and grown. Yeah, and you've come and you've grown into this intelligent man that has so much wisdom and knowledge to spread, and you think a lot like I think. And bro, I appreciate you beyond words, bro. Every time you're on, every time you're doing this, if I don't catch it, I go back and watch it. Like, I appreciate what you're doing, bro. You're a blessing, man. And the good thing about it is a lot of this talent came out of Sunset Park, man. And
Yes, it
it's a
did.
lot of bright minds came out of Sunset Park. And you know what? Big up to you, my man. Love you, bro.
People, we don't want to get sentimental, but the big brother has just said it all in one swoop. Again, Mike, thank you so much. And when you get that news, I'm expecting an exclusive. You heard
Absolutely.
it here.
Absolutely. And I might even bring the big boy with me. We do it together.
Oh
Be
man,
nice.
that would be really dope, man. I
Yeah.
would really appreciate that. All right, so we'll speak soon.
Yes, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Pops. Appreciate you, bro.
Anytime, brother.
All right, my
Anytime.
man.
Take
Okay, man.
care.
We'll talk soon, all right?
All right,
Goodbye, everybody. Take care.
people. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I hope you guys enjoyed the exchange. Um, I wanna say thank you to everybody that stayed. For this full hour. Um, Mikey is an incredible person overall. His music, the things that he's done, and just the person that he's been all these years. He's an incredible talent and an incredible human. And again, I hope everybody enjoyed the little history lesson that we brought on, to the set this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed this Hump Day show. I just want to say thank you to my wife for putting up with me and letting me take over the space whenever I need to. Salute, Stone, I see you. Millie, I see you. My brother Bam, I see you. Caesar Malanaji, salute to you in Florida. My brother in Texas, Joey. I see everybody here tonight. I really, really appreciate you guys sticking around. And as always, live the life you love the life you live, and stay tuned because Sunday we have a very, very, I want to say a show that I hope everybody tunes in for. This Sunday, we're going to be speaking about addiction with Mr. Ricky Adorno and Mr. Mark David Valentine. This show is going to cover their addiction, their trials, their tribulations, the ups and downs, and what they did to fight to overcome their addiction and the things that they're doing now today, presently in their lives, to help others. So I hope everybody can carve out a little time on Sunday. This Sunday at 7:30. Again, we're going to be discussing addiction with Mr. Ricky Adorno and Mr. Mark David Valentine. Next Wednesday, October 18th, 7:30 p.m., we are going to be speaking to another producer from Sunset Park, Mr. Martin Black Rivera. Now, if you know, you know. So I hope you guys could all come back for that next Wednesday again. We're going to be speaking to Martin Black Rivera, another Sunset Park producer. And then the following Sunday, we have something special lined up for everybody. So if you haven't, like and follow the set 6145 on Facebook or go to YouTube because we broadcast simultaneously. You can go to YouTube. It's the set 6145. You'll see our logo, as you can see right here. And you can just click for all the videos that we've done so far. Give them a look, catch up, whatever it is. Subscribe to the channel. We have so much more content coming. I have another artist that I'm going to be profiling here. It's sort of like a Halloween special. I'm not going to give it away, but just follow the page and you're going to see the update. If you have kids, or if you even, well, not even, because we're in COVID. What am I saying? Nobody's doing no fucking Halloween party. Anyway, look out for the Halloween special. Stone, I see you, baby. I'm really glad you came through, especially seeing my boy Bam here too. It's just great to see you all. I really appreciate you guys. Be safe out there, and I'll see you in the next episode.